One of the loneliest seasons of my life wasn't when everything was falling apart. It was when everything looked exactly like I had always dreamed it would. Let me explain. I had landed my dream job in the NICU, the job I worked so flipping hard for, the job I prayed for, the job I thought would finally make me feel like I had made it. And then one day, I remember looking at myself in the mirror and thinking, what is wrong with me? I had everything I worked for. I had the career. I was making a difference. I loved the babies and the families. I loved being a nurse. So why did it still feel like something was missing? And then that's when the guilt would instantly creep in. Like, how dare I think that, right? There were people praying for the very life I was living. There were nurses who would give anything to have the job that I had. So I convinced myself that the problem had to be me. I thought maybe I wasn't grateful enough. Maybe I just needed to work harder. Maybe this feeling would eventually go away. But it didn't. And looking back now, I realized something that completely changed the trajectory of my life. I wasn't actually craving more. I was craving different. It wasn't what I was doing. It was how I was doing it. I loved nursing. I loved being a nurse. I just didn't love who I had become while doing it. I loved caring for people, but I didn't love living in a constant state of reaction. I loved making a difference, but I didn't love feeling like I was slowly disappearing in the process, losing pieces of myself. And when you reach this point, I think a lot of people assume they're chasing a different life, when in reality, what they're actually longing for is a different experience of the life they are already living. If you think you need a different life, you will spend years waiting for the next job, the next season, the next opportunity, the next promotion, the next vacation, or the next chapter to finally make you feel different. But then you will wake up one day wondering, how did I get here? And I think one of the saddest things that can happen is becoming incredibly successful at maintaining a life you never intentionally chose. Sit with that for a minute. Not because it's a bad life, not because you aren't grateful, but because somewhere along the way you got so busy that you stopped asking yourself whether your life still reflected the person you wanted to become. Achievement and alignment are not the same thing. A full calendar isn't proof of a full life. Productivity can fill your schedule, but intention is what fills your life. Somewhere along the way, we've started celebrating lives that look impressive from the outside, good on paper, while quietly ignoring whether they actually feel fulfilling on the inside. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend my life simply maintaining something I accidentally built. I want to intentionally create something that feels like mine. That became one of the biggest shifts in my life. I stopped asking what's next, and I started asking what actually matters. How do I want to feel when I wake up in the morning? How do I want to show up for my family? How do I want other people to experience my presence? When my boys think back to their childhood, what version of their mom do I hope that they remember? When I look back on my own life one day, what do I hope mattered most? Those questions changed everything because they gave me something I hadn't had in a long time. Direction. Not because I suddenly had every answer, but because I finally had a compass. And here's what I want you to hear if you are sitting where I once sat, staring at your own life, wondering why something feels off, or wondering what is wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not ungrateful. You are not asking for too much. You may simply be waking up to the realization that the life you've been maintaining no longer reflects the person you are becoming. That's what you're facing right now. And that's not failure. That is awareness. And awareness is where every meaningful change begins. You do not have to have your entire future figured out today. You don't even need to know exactly what's next. You don't even need a 5-year plan before you take your first step. You just need the courage to admit that something needs to be different. Because pretending you are fine doesn't keep you safe, it keeps you stuck. I often tell my coaching clients that clarity doesn't usually arrive all at once. It unfolds with one honest conversation, one intentional decision, and one courageous step to make a change. And sometimes the hardest part isn't actually figuring out where you're going. It's giving yourself permission to stop pretending the current path is still the right one. And that's exactly why the Gain Clarity section inside my Elevate Your Frequency workbook exists. Not to hand you answers, but to help you ask better questions. Questions that reconnect you with who you are, what matters most, and the kind of life you are intentionally building from this point forward. Because here's what I know. You cannot create a different future while staying committed to the same patterns that created your current reality. Let me repeat that. You cannot create a different future while staying committed to the same patterns that created your current reality. At some point, you need someone or something to help you see beyond the limits of the perspectives that's been keeping you stuck. This is why coaching changes lives, not because someone tells you what to do. That is not what life coaching is. But because life coaching helps you see what you can no longer see on your own. They ask the questions you've stopped asking yourself. They challenge the stories you've started believing. And they help you move toward a life that finally feels like your own, like the one that you want to be living. The goal isn't to build a life that looks good from the outside, guys. No. The goal and the purpose is to build a life that feels like yours from the inside. If you're realizing today that you've been living a life that no longer feels like yours,